Welcome to Meeple Mentor. I'm Jared, and we are about to play Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. Let's take a look. I'll show you how. Feel free to pause the video as needed to follow along with your copy of the game. For your convenience, I've added chapter timestamps in the description to the different sections of the tutorial. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell below the video so you don't miss any of my latest content. In Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia, the world as we know it has ended, and in its place, the city of Euphoria has risen. Believing that a new world order is needed to prevent another apocalypse, the Euphorian elite erect high walls around their golden city and promote intellectual equality above all else. Gone are personal freedoms, gone is knowledge of the past. All that matters is the future. The Euphorians aren't alone. Outside the city are those who experience the apocalypse firsthand. They have the memories and scars to prove it. These wastelanders have cobbled together a society of historians and farmers among the forgotten scrapyards of the past. There is more to the world than the surface of the earth. Deep underground lies the hidden city of Subterra, occupied by miners, mechanics, and revolutionaries. By keeping their workers in the dark, they've patched together a network of pipes and sewers, of steam and gears, of hidden passages and secret stairways. Hovering above the world are the mysterious Icarites in their zeppelins, luring citizens up into the clouds with promises of eternal bliss. 4 distinct societies, each of them waiting for you to rewrite history. With this backstory in mind, 2 to 6 players take on the role of low-level managers in this dystopia, trying to use your workers to take over. It's a worker placement game where your workers are dice, and the number shown is their knowledge. You'll want to keep your workers dumb and happy enough to not rebel against you. Slowly gain enough authority over the various areas of Euphoria and resolve your ethical dilemma to win. Before explaining any further, let's set up the game. To start, lay out the game board in the middle of the table. Now shuffle all the recruit cards together and deal 4 out to each player. Place the remaining recruit deck next to the board. Players must choose 2 of them to keep and the other 2 return to the game box. One of these recruits will be active and face up from the beginning of the game, while the second recruit card is kept face down until activated later in the game. For now, try picking an active recruit that has a special ability that will help you early in the game. Let each person pick a color to be and collect 2 dice of that color and a cardboard multiplier tile to keep track of resources. Resources in the game are meant to be unlimited, so you'll use the multiplier areas to keep track of large amounts of resources. The extra 2 dice in your color should sit off the board to form a pool of recruitable workers. Give each player 10 authority star tokens in their color, 1 heart-shaped morale token, and 1 head-shaped knowledge token in their color. Shuffle the artifact card deck and keep it face down next to the board. Anytime this deck runs out, you can shuffle the discards to form a new deck. Now you'll place unavailable territory tokens on each of the 4 territory stars on the board. Place enough on each one so the number of empty spaces equals the number of players. Shuffle the ethical dilemma cards and deal 1 to each player. Keep these secret and face down. Only you can see your dilemma card. At the top left of the game board, everyone should place their morale token on the first space of the morale chart. Then everyone places their knowledge token on the number 3 die space of the knowledge chart. Place all the bliss tokens here by the cloud mine. Put the clay resource tokens here above the wastelands tunnel. To the right, put all the food tokens at the farm. Put all the energy tokens in the center by the generator area. The stone resources and water tokens should go down here by the aquifer. Lastly, the gold should sit to the left of the board by the Euphorian tunnel. At the end of the 3 tunnels, place the exclusive unavailable action space markers. Place the 3 minor meeples on the start space of each of the tunnels. At the bottom right of the board, place a progress token at the start of each allegiance track. Shuffle all the market tiles and place one face down at each of the 6 construction sites on the board. The The rest of the market tiles won't be used and can return to the box. Each player should roll their 2 starting worker dice. Whoever rolls the highest total will be the first player. Keep the dice with their rolled values, since these will be their starting knowledge. There are 4 main areas of the game board that correspond to the 4 factions represented in Euphoria. Each one is distinguished by the artwork and border color of the spaces. The top green area is Icarus, where the people ride zeppelins. Below that is the wastelands, where the hovels and farms grow food outside of the city. The city of Euphoria is found on the left of the board with a gold border. The Subterrans live underground and are located at the bottom of the board with blue borders. The game starts with the first player taking their turn, followed by everyone in clockwise order. The turn order never changes and there are no rounds to speak of. During the game, players will slowly be able to place their authority star tokens out to various places. The first player to put 10 stars out will be the winner. During your turn, you must either place a worker on the board, retrieve your workers, or use your turn to reveal your ethical dilemma card and resolve it. Each player can only do this once per game though. When placing a worker, you must place one of your available worker dice. It must be available and not already on the board. After placing the die, you'll immediately gain the benefits of the action. There is a special exception when placing your worker. If you have available workers at the start of your turn that have the same knowledge, meaning the same die face, you may place all of them on the same turn. Should any worker become available during your turn that matches the same die face, it can't be used this turn. There are 3 types of worker action spaces that operate in different ways. The gray squares with a dotted outline are temporary use. Workers can be placed on these spots even if another worker is already there. It can even be your own worker. That worker is then bumped off and returned to its owner and becomes available for them. Anytime a worker die becomes available, immediately roll it to establish its knowledge. Sometimes these action spaces have costs to pay to go there. Look to the left at the cost shown in the dark gray square. Anytime in the game you see a dark gray space, it refers to a cost that must be paid. After paying the cost, you'll gain the benefit in the white circle below it. Likewise, during the game, anywhere you see the white circles, it indicates gaining that as a reward. The solid bordered square action spaces are one-time use spots found next to construction sites. Pay the resource cost inside of it to go there. Workers cannot be bumped off of these. The large gray rectangle spaces are multi-use and can hold any number of workers at a time. Instead of placing a worker, you may spend your turn to retrieve your placed workers from the board back to you. You can choose any or all of them. There are 2 ways you can choose to remove them at different costs. The retrieval cost options are displayed in the corner of the board. You can pay 1 food or 1 bliss to retrieve any or all workers, then gain 2 morale on the morale chart. Move your heart marker forward. The resource cost is the same no matter how many workers you decide to take back. The other cost option is to pay no resources but lose 1 morale on the chart. You can do this even if your token is at 1. Your current morale represents your maximum hand size. Throughout the game, you'll be able to gain artifact cards to your hand. If you lose morale and now hold more cards than your limit, you must immediately discard down. Also, when gaining a card that puts you over the limit, you still draw it, but then choose a card to discard. Anytime you remove your dice from the board for any reason, roll that die or dice and perform a knowledge check. The check is performed when creating a new worker, retrieving workers, when your worker is bumped off a spot, or when taking dice back from a completed market construction. You'll look at the position of your knowledge token along the knowledge chart. This chart represents your workers' awareness of their world. Should their collective knowledge get too high, they will run from the dystopia. After rolling these dice, add the values of the rolled dice and any other available dice you have. Don't count ones still on the board, if any. Then add the number shown on the knowledge chart where your token is. If this total is 16 or more, one of your workers runs away. The available worker with the highest knowledge is lost and placed into the pool of recruitable workers. Only one worker is lost during these checks, even if there's a tie for the highest knowledge on the dice. Everyone starts the game with an ethical dilemma card, which can be completed once during the game. On that turn, you won't place a worker or retrieve any workers. Instead, flip the card over and pay the artifact card cost shown in the center of the card. You can either pay the exact required artifact shown at the top, or any 2 artifact cards. These are placed in an artifact discard pile. After paying the cost, you must make an important ethical choice to fight the establishment or contribute to the dystopia. The left side of the card corresponds to fighting the establishment. The reward is to draw 2 recruits and keep only one of them. The new recruit goes face down in front of you as a hidden recruit. It's possible the recruit may be allowed to immediately flip over or gain an authority star, but I'll explain more on that later. By choosing to contribute to the dystopia, you get to immediately place one of your authority star tokens on the ethical dilemma card. Everyone starts the game with 1 active recruit and 1 hidden recruit. Each recruit is aligned with one of the 4 factions in the game, and offers some kind of ability shown on the left of their card. Some recruits let you make some kind of exchange, like spending a resource to bump up on a chart. These kinds of abilities can't be multiplied, meaning you can only do that transaction once when activated. They'll be situational and explained on their card. Some recruits let you sacrifice workers to gain something. However, you can't do that if it would leave you with no workers. Some recruits that ask you to compare a worker's knowledge to another as lowest or highest, well, in those cases, ties won't count. The worker must be the highest or lowest exclusively. When a recruit gives you a bonus for bumping another worker, the bump and the exchange happens first, then everything else related to the action space. Other recruits may check if you have a resource collected. In those cases, it's having any amount of that resource, not exactly one. The 4 factions in the game are Euphorians, Subterrans, Wastelanders, and Icarites. They are also color-coded and found in the allegiance track in the corner of the game board. All players will be able to increase these allegiances, although the track itself doesn't have any worker spaces. The track measures the strength of each faction as players do actions in their areas. Whenever a player gains an allegiance point in the faction, the token advances 1 space forward. Each track has 4 tiers of benefits that will apply if the progress token has reached or exceeded the tier level. Only players who have active recruits in that faction will be able to reap the benefits of the tier levels. Note that the tier levels are cumulative, so if the progress token is in the 2nd tier area, players still get the tier 1 benefit too. Each of the first tier rewards apply when gaining the commodity shown. You'll get to take 1 extra of that resource. Energy for Euphoria, water for Subterra, food for the Wasteland, and bliss for Icarus. To help you remember to gain the bonus from then on, place the allegiance bonus marker on the corresponding commodity area of the board. In the tier 2 levels of the tracks, you'll get more powerful actions in their faction tunnels. For example, normally when you place a worker, you choose 1 resource or draw an artifact, but now you'll get both. Since the Icarites are in the sky and don't have a tunnel, they'll let you draw an artifact card after placing one of your authority stars in Icarite territory. Use the allegiance bonus markers to mark these bonuses on the board as well to help players remember. When an allegiance track reaches the 3rd tier spaces, any players who have hidden recruits corresponding to that faction get to immediately flip them face up. These are now active and can be used for their abilities. Additionally, if this was your first recruit in that faction, you are now qualified for all the bonuses from that recruit's allegiance track. Having multiple recruits in the same faction does not double the bonuses you earn. The 4th tier in the track for each faction is the same. As soon as the progress token reaches the final space, everyone gets to place 1 authority token on each active recruit in that faction. Players can still take actions that increase that faction's allegiance, but the progress tokens never move beyond the 4th tier space. Should you use your ethical dilemma card to gain a new recruit and its faction has already matched tier 3, the recruit comes into play immediately active. Likewise, it will immediately gain an authority token on it if its faction has reached tier 4. These can be good ways to get your authority tokens out, but can also help other players get theirs out too. Now let's take a look at the various action spaces found on the game board where you can place your workers. Each worker action space gives you some benefit. First up is the worker activation tank. Going here will let you gain a new worker die from the pool. You may have up to 4 available workers at a time. By placing your worker in the left action space, you pay 3 energy to the supply and lose 2 knowledge on the knowledge chart, thanks to the shock the worker received when being activated. Then take the new worker die in your color and roll it like normal, including doing a knowledge check. The knowledge check happens after paying the cost and adjusting the charts. The second option is to place your worker on the right side and pay 3 water to the supply. Gain your worker die and move 2 advancements along the morale chart thanks to the fresh blast of water the worker received when being activated. You may do either of these actions to increase morale or decrease your knowledge, even if you don't have a worker in the pool to take. Each of the factions has a commodity worker action space to gain a certain resource. They all operate the same way though. They show 3 different ratios in the same ranges for each area. The number of resources you collect will be based on the value of all the workers' knowledge in the space. After placing your worker to the gray rectangular area, add up the values of all the dice there. Then gain the rewards shown below where that number falls. So if the total value is between 1 and 4 at the generator, you'll take 1 energy and advance the allegiance in Euphoria by 1. If the total knowledge is between 5 and 8, gain 1 energy and lose 1 knowledge on the knowledge chart. And for a total of 9 or more, take 2 energy and gain 1 knowledge on the chart. You are allowed to take the resources even if you can't advance or reduce your knowledge because you've reached the end of the chart. Gaining allegiance is not optional when the value is 1 to 4. Each commodity area on the board has these same benefits, just changing up which resource is collected. The aquifer area gives you water, the farm gives you food, and the cloud mine gives you bliss. There are 3 tunnels in the game. Each of the ground level factions are trying to tunnel into each other to gain access to their enemies' commodities. By reaching the end of the tunnel, players with recruits of that faction gain access to their enemy's commodity. The tunnel action lets any player place a worker and pay the cost shown to the left and gain the resource shown, or draw an artifact card to your hand. Then advance the miner Meeple forward towards the end of the tunnel 1 space. As the miner reaches the 6th space of the tunnel, all players with hidden recruits of this faction get to immediately activate them. It doesn't matter who moved the miner, nor if you contributed to the tunnel at all. You then have access to that faction's allegiance bonuses and the recruit special ability for the rest of the game. Once a miner reaches the end of the tunnel after 9 moves, a new exclusive action space becomes available. Remove the unavailable action space token from it. Any players who have active recruits in that faction may place workers in this exclusive action space. Even if the tunnel is complete, all players may still use the main tunnel action. At the beginning of the game, you place 6 randomized market tiles out over various construction sites. Icarus didn't get any because they have pre-built markets. These markets must first be built before they can be flipped over and used. To contribute to constructing a site, place a worker on one of the one-time use action spaces to the left of it, paying the shown resource. In order to fully complete a construction, a number of these 4 action spaces must be simultaneously occupied by workers by any combination of players. In a 2 or 3 player game, any 2 spaces left of the site must be occupied. In a 4 player game, any 3 spaces must be occupied. And for 5 or 6 player games, all 4 spaces must be simultaneously occupied. If someone removes one of their workers from a site before it's completed, another worker will be required then to complete the site. The site only flips when the dice are simultaneously occupying the spaces. The resource cost for placing a worker at these spots must always be paid, even if someone was there and left. Once complete, flip the market tile and slide it to the left to reveal the temporary use action space it was covering. All workers that were used to help build the market are returned to their owners. Remember to roll them and do knowledge checks at this time. Any player who contributed at least 1 worker to constructing the site gets to place 1 authority token at the center of the market tile. Anyone without an authority token on the market tile must incur the ongoing game penalty described at the bottom of the tile. After a market has been built, you may go to the action space to exchange various goods for plots of land in that faction's territory. Any player may go to the built market, not just those who built it. Place a worker at the top right action space of the market and pay all the costs shown on the market tile. The costs are always found in the dark gray squares. After paying the cost, you may place an authority token in that faction's territory. Then advance that faction's allegiance one space forward on the allegiance track. Each faction has a star-shaped area known as their territory. Players will be able to place their authority stars on empty spaces in the territory. Once the territory is full, no one can place any more there. The market action you take only has access to the faction territory it's located in. After a territory is full of stars, players can still go to those markets, but will only get to advance the faction's allegiance track. Each faction has artifact markets available from the beginning of the game and do not need to be constructed. These are hexagonal shaped, matching the backs of the artifact cards. Each of these action spaces requires you to discard any 3 artifact cards to the discard pile, then advance the allegiance of the faction associated with the market, and place an authority token out in one of 2 places, either on an empty territory space for the faction, just like visiting a market, or onto any constructed market tile in that faction's area where you don't already have an authority token. This allows you to also then ignore the constructed market's penalty going forward. It will be as if you helped construct it. Also, anytime you should pay 3 artifact cards, you also have the option to discard 2 identical artifacts instead. You may continue to place workers on artifact markets to advance the allegiance track, even if there are no more places for you to place authority tokens. Due to their insidious motives and traitor mentality, the Icarites act a little differently than the Euphorians, Subterrans, and Wastelanders. Their key method of advancing in the game is to trade resources and artifacts. Authority tokens may not be placed on Icarite markets. These markets are available from the beginning of the game though. Their artifact market works the same as the other factions, but each of the large square markets here is unique. The first one is called Nimbus Loft and requires you to pay any combination of 3 resources. Then you may advance the allegiance of Icarus and place 1 authority star on an empty space in the Icarus territory. The Breeze Bar's cost is 1 bliss resource and any 1 non-bliss resource. Then advance the allegiance for Icarus and draw 2 artifact cards off the deck. The Sky Lounge has the same cost as the Breeze Bar, 1 bliss resource and 1 non-bliss resource. Then advance its allegiance marker once and gain any 2 resources. Since the Icarites are in the sky and don't have any tunnels, the only way to activate hidden Icarite recruits is to reach the 8th spot on the Icarite allegiance track. The end of the game is triggered once any player has placed all 10 of their authority tokens on the board. That player becomes the winner. There are no more turns. It's possible that multiple players place their final authority star out at the same time due to the construction of a market or by reaching the end of an allegiance track. If that happens, ties are broken by whoever has the highest morale on the chart. Then it's broken by the lowest knowledge. Then by most markets with your authority tokens on them. Then most territories with at least 1 of your authority tokens on them. Lastly, if you're still tied on all of these, have them roll all their active workers until the tie is broken by highest roll. As a reminder for places players can put authority tokens, they can be on constructed markets, on territories, on recruit cards, and on a completed ethical dilemma. There are some game variants you can choose to include if you want. The first is to do a recruit card draft at the start of the game. Deal 4 cards to each player. Everyone picks one and passes the rest clockwise. Everyone takes another and passes again. Do this process until everyone has 4 cards in front of them. From these, pick your 2 recruits and discard the rest. Another variant is to include a market draft after you've played a few times. At the start of the game, deal 2 markets to each player and set the rest aside. Each player chooses 1 market to include in the game and places it face down on the table. Remove the other unchosen markets from the game. When all players have made their decision, add additional markets from the original market stack set aside until you have 6 total markets. Shuffle these together and place them on the board like normal. You can also include a morale and knowledge draft. Starting with the oldest player and proceeding clockwise in a snake draft format, players place 1 of their tokens on the morale and knowledge chart. These can only be placed on empty spaces in this draft. The last player to put their first token out immediately places their second, and reverse the order for players to place their second. Lastly, the double house rule can be added for when you begin your turn with more than one available worker of the same knowledge. In order to place more than one on the same turn, you must lose one morale for each worker placed beyond the first one before you place it. Keep the rulebook handy and check BoardGameGeek.com for FAQs and extra content. Check the video description for links to Cloud Puncher games for board game shelving and Mr. Meeple t-shirts for cool board gaming shirts. The Meeple Mentor channel is now part of the board game community, the Gateway Network, made up of great upcoming board game content creators. Originally founded by the Gamecasters podcast, the network includes Instagrammers, podcasters, YouTubers, artists, and more. Click the link in the video's description or head over to the Gateway Network's Instagram to find great new content. And thanks for watching this tutorial. Like and subscribe if you found this teaching helpful. Stick around to watch another Learn to Play video. And remember, teach when you can, but always be learning. See you next time.